to understand what's happening in the world today as it is outlined in these parshas. So, I'd like you to turn, if you've got Jerusalem Bible, I left a few here, page 15, or chapter 15, the Bereshis. This was a vision, which according to the sages, was the first vision given to Abraham when he was age 75. It's called the vision, we've spoken about it before, the Brit Ben Abatarim, known as the Holocaust. But then it says in verse 18, on that day, Hashem God made a covenant with Abraham, saying, to your seed I've given this land from the river Egypt to the Euphrates. And then there are mentioned 10 nations that occupied this area. Now if we go to the end of the Parsha, of Lech Lecha, where the description of the Brit Milah, and that was 25 years later, when it says when Avram was 99, and when Yishmael had been born, and Yishmael was then Bar Mitzvah, 13, which you'll find on page 17. It's also chapter 17, the last verses. So there it says, we turn to the previous page, verse 8, in chapter 17. When he was making the covenant, and his name was being changed from Avram to Avraham, it says in verse 8, I will give to you ulezarach arecha, and your seed after you, the land where you are at present the ger, your sojourner, the land of Canaan, for an eternal possession. Then when it says the land of Canaan, and then it says straight away, this is connected with Brit Milah. So people ask the question, why in chapter 15, the earlier occasion was Avram promised much more than the greater Israel, from the river Egypt, which some say it's the Nile, to the river Euphrates. And that's the greater part of the Middle East. It was promised to Avram and his seed when he and his wife were barren. Yeah? But Hashem promised him. And Avram, knowing that his mission in life was to change the world, and he was given a blessing, through him we bless all the families of the earth. How is it possible to have no children? But he accepted. But here we're going further. Yishmael had been born, and Sarah had attempted to raise Yishmael to be a true son of Avram. We find Avraham hoped that his son Ishmael would be a successor, because they couldn't see any child coming between him and Sarah directly. But Sarah adopted Ishmael, and Ishmael was willing to be raised at his Bar Mitzvah to have the Brit Milah, together with his father Avram. Which is a great change. So that's what some people want to answer the question. If you look carefully, I don't know if you can you see a difference between the expression which is used in chapter 15 and the one which is used in chapter 17 concerning the area which was to be given to the seed of Avram? What's the difference? It's really one word. There's a difference in areas, we said it. The Brit Milah was given the land of Canaan. And the Brit Bein Abatarim, he was given the area from Egypt to Iraq and Iran, and all the area in between. How do you understand this?
Which verse is it? In 17?
In 17, it is verse 8. I've given to you and to your seed after you the whole of the land of Canaan, called Eretz Canaan, Lachuzat Olam.
Well, in the verse 15, it doesn't speak about Abraham. It says, I'll give you descendants.
Just a minute. In 17 verse 8, Nafti lecha or lezaracharecha. In verse 15, it says that on that day, Hashem made, verse 18, on that day Hashem made a covenant with Avram, saying, to your seed I've given this land, from the river of Egypt to the great river of Euphrates. Mentions 10 nations. What is the planet? So what's the difference? He says Lazaracha.
But does he want himself? Because in the 17 it says to you.
In both cases it says to your seed.
Yes. But
what's the difference?
But in the first, in the case about the land of Israel, it says that to him and to his seed he also gave the land. Because in chapter 15, it says that about the seed. In chapter 17, it says about to himself and to his seed he gave the land.
Okay, but it comes to the same. What do you mean? All right, that's one difference, you might say. This is given to Avram, and the other one's only given to his seed. But we know even when it was given to Avram, it wasn't really his, properly. Because he... So this was the land, which was in both instances it was also given to the seed. Given to Avram was, let's call it in principle. He didn't actually possess it to live in the whole land. Just he was regarded in Canaan also in the seal of Tapatochenu. But for example, he wanted to purchase just one little bit of land a little bit later. He couldn't just take it. As far as the Canaanites was concerned, he was a stranger, an alien. The Meirash respected him. And how could he take out of their land? He only had Yishmael. Didn't already had another group of people who, in his household, we know that, Yilid Bait, Mikmas Kesef, had quite a large household, but it was not more than a clan. But he couldn't say it actually belonged to him, and that he used it. How could he use the whole land? It was just a small group in comparison with the Canaanites. But the difference is like this. If we follow what we've been learning the last few shiurim, the difference is clear. That there's such a zaracha and zaracha acharecha. Because together with this Brit Milah, he was also told at the end of last week's Parsha that you're going to have a child. That Yishmael, you see, even then, at that occasion, Avram said to Hashem, okay, so we don't have a child yet of our own. So let's hope that Yishmael will be the successor. I've got to have a successor. Otherwise, how will this become fulfilled? And who can be the successor? Yishmael. And you see, all the time he hoped that Yishmael would grow up in the right manner. After all, he also did Brit together with him at Bar Mitzvah. So he thought, maybe it's good. And maybe Sarah is not going to have another child. In which case, Yishmael will be the successor. But he said, I'm already now 99 years old, and the only child I've got is Ishmael. He comes from Hagar, who was a maidservant. Hagar's been raised in our house. She was a bit rebellious at the time, but she decided she's going to commit herself to follow the lifestyle of our home, and that's how Sarah tried to educate her, and then to educate the young Ishmael in the same direction. So therefore, Avram said, this is obviously what's going to happen. How can there be a miracle? They even said, how is it possible for Sarah to have a child? So therefore, let Ishmael become more religious. Let Ishmael become more dedicated in truth. That was his prayer. So Hashem said to him, no, Lo Yirashe Chazeh, this is not going to be your future. But it's going to be a son born to Sarah. Well, it was hoping, they were waiting. Didn't happen. So on this occasion with the Milah, that was a turning point. Because you also see there was a new name giving to Avraham, and to Sarah. That Avram and Sarah were going to be the progenitors of the people of Hashem, who would bring blessing to the whole world. That was the promise. But it was a promise. It didn't happen. Therefore he said, Luis Menshafra. So the same applies to the land. It might have been possible, we can see for Ishmael, he had the choice. As we'll soon see further, he had the choice to become a true successor to Avraham Avinu. He took the bris upon himself, but even at that bris, as mentioned yesterday, at that bris, he was willing to take on the cutting of the altar. He was not willing to take on the priya. Well, that I've already mentioned yesterday. I'm not going to that in detail. So he saw that Ishmael was not really living in front of Hashem as he would expect him to, as he would like him to. That's why he said the prayer, Lu Yishmael Yicheh Lefanecha, would be that Ishmael would change and become completely committed to the covenant which Hashem made with Avram to change the world. I can't see it happen. So you can say like this. Initially, Ishmael could have been included. It fits in very well with the deep interpretation I've been giving. That Avram, what is Avram's thought? He said, thought to himself, even afterwards when Yitzchak was born, he thought, even with Yitzchak, he didn't want to say, send Ishmael away, later in the Parsha. He wanted to keep him. Sarah saw that Ishmael is not growing up in the right manner. He's chosen to allow the opposing forces, which were so strong in the world at that time, and which he attached himself to follow, like it said, repair Adam, to follow his wideness, and to nevertheless say, I am part of the covenant. So Abraham thought, maybe he can become part of the covenant. Even if we're going to have another son, maybe that other son will dedicate himself entirely to spirituality. As in fact they saw when Yitzchak was growing up, he was really more completely going after his father and after his mother to go in the direction of spreading the true service of Hashem. And Ishmael went in a different direction. But nevertheless, he thought, let me have both of them as part of the covenant, because to establish a nation, when promised we're going to establish a nation, then a nation needs both parts. So Ishmael will look after the external aspect, Yitzchak will look after the spiritual aspect. That was his idea. But Sarah thought, he's not suiting that. We'll soon see why. So therefore that explains something that's happening today. The prophecies given, some of the greatest prophecies about the future, were revealed to Hagar, as we already discussed. even when she was pregnant with Ishmael. And then we were told, yes, your descendant from Ishmael is going to be a very great power in the world. This was repeated to Avram as well. It'll be a great power in the world. But it will not be the power which will bring blessing to the whole world. But they become very powerful. And in fact, at the beginning, he said the whole of the Middle East belongs to the seed of Avram, the Zaracha. That's what's going to happen. And that's what has happened. Today, the whole of the Middle East belongs to those who follow to some extent, and most of them believe in it as well, that they're descendants in one way or another from Ishmael. And Ishmael has replaced Yitzchak, and they have nearly the whole Middle East. They have from the river of Egypt to the Euphrates. That's what they have. And they're all the seed of Avram. From the point of view, not specifically ethnically, but they follow the same religious and we can say national concept. But they are held together through Islam. Although there are many different groups amongst them, but they all say, well, connected to Islam. Even Iran also the same. So they're all part of it. And what is done is Eretz Canaan. Eretz Canaan, where we see the Kedusha does include the West Bank, but Eva Yadein, also partial Kedusha. Even that Transjordan is only was conquered after by Moshe Rabbeinu, therefore it's a partial Kedusha. But in fact today, we have the main Eretz Canaan is this side of the Yarden. And was so even in the time of the first and second temple, when there was a proper conquest of Am Yisrael. And they took over nationally. The powers of Ishmael developed only more recently. In the last few hundred years, they've developed in a strong manner. They're one of the strongest powers in the world, Yador Bakol, as we already described. We already prophesied to Hog at the beginning. So that explains that this we see here the map of the Middle East, which is mentioned in the first vision to Avram, chapter 15, from the river Euphrates, was given to the seed of Avram. But they consider themselves the seed of Avram entirely. And they say Ishmael has taken over, is more important than Yitzchak. And some of them even deny that Yitzchak ever existed. And they go and put in the Akedah, they put Ishmael there instead of Yitzchak. Change everything. So therefore, this is clearly the text. Because Zaracha Acharecha means those who really follow you. And that was Yitzchak. And the Zaracha, in more general terms, includes also, at least includes Ishmael, because Ishmael also believes in one God. And he also took the bris, and therefore he's given the Middle East. That's what's happening today. That's just as an aside. But what do we see? In fact, to understand what's mentioned in next week's parsha, so it says, you look a few chapters further, so it says that this was at the time of the weaning of, when it says in next week's parsha that Yitzchak was born, and for Yitzchak they made a great celebration, because by that time Avram had become recognized as a spiritual power by the people of Canaan. He was respected by all of them. But all of them said, you know, Avram very nice, Avram was sorry, they preached to us, we should only do kindness, and they pleaded for Sodom and Gomorrah. It became known, Sodom and Gomorrah were destroyed, and many things happened, they saw around Avram Avinu, that attracted also people to become his followers and gave him his advice. And then it says at the beginning of Pasuk Vayera when he was born, I mean, it was a huge miracle. Yitzchak, it's, as I said, he who laughs last laughs best. So they laughed what was. They were filled with joy. Now there was the promised son, which people didn't believe in anymore. And we see all Avram was becoming quite strong, and that's why Avimelech, the king of the Palestinians, who were also in the land of Canaan, They thought they have it's the whole episode related, and then he wants to make peace with him, and he even so what happened when he took Sarah into his palace. In the end, he wanted to appease him. So it says at the end of chapter 20, Avimelech, he enriched Avram very much, and he also said, feel at home here, because he saw there's blessing wherever Avram went. And then afterwards in 21, then Sarah has the baby. And what happened? He was 100 years when he was born, and Sarah said, it's really made me a tzchok. Everyone's going to laugh, what's happened? A woman as old as she, who would have believed it? But then it says when he grew up and he was weaned, after a couple of years, that used to wean, stop and be nursed. So he made a big mishte gadol, Yomi Gamelet, at Yitzchak. So the divided people. And then Sarah saw the son of Hagar the Egyptian, who had given, it doesn't even mention his name here, he gave birth to Avraham, Mitzachek. So I think this, Yitzchak means, Litzchak means to laugh, Litzachek means to mock. Difference in Kal and Pi'er. You extend laughing to mocking. So he mocked them. And how did he mock them? He said, they're making a big feast. They didn't make such a feast for me. But for him they make a huge feast. So of course Hagar was also a bit upset. Hagar said, what? Ishmael is the firstborn. So he said, let them make a feast. It doesn't make any difference. I'm the true firstborn son to Avram, so I get the Yerusha. First of all, I get a double portion in any material goods they have. But more than that, I'm the real follower. I'm the real follower of Avram. Because he was born 13 years later. And also, he made a bris when he was 8 days old. That didn't mean anything. He couldn't even be consulted, and who knows if he would know what the bris is, if he would have taken it. And at the age of 13, I made the bris. So obviously he was mocking the whole situation. You make a big party, and the party also the people in the Canadas and so on, but I'm the real one, I'm going to stay here. And you'll see, when Avram and Sarah die, I'll be in charge of whatever they leave over. And I'm going to be the big nation. Has been promised to me. God has promised. He promised my mother. My mother knew it. The prophets went to her as well. That I'm going to be one of the greatest powerful nations in the world. And of course, Sarah, who knew more was going on between Hagar and Ishmael, she recognized this. So she said, it's Mitzachek. She said, Avram, drive out this maidservant and her son. He can't be together with Yitzchak. I want to raise Yitzchak now to be really religious. And he's not really. He's growing up now. He's taking advantage. And even as Rashi brings, the Mitzachek includes also the seeds. That's how you have to understand it, because he was still basically a tzaddik. He still kept, according to all the customs which were adopted by Avram and Sarah, he kept to them, his mother also. But underneath, when she saw this, she also saw a bit that he had wildness in him, seeds of violence, and in fact they say he also took it says after he became a teacher of archers. So one of the sports he did was archery, and he even threw, perhaps in a childish manner, but nevertheless she saw in him that he had in him the ability to allow his destructive instincts to even kill Yitzchak, because he was practicing archery. So just to miss this younger baby, younger child, only a few years old, by a few feet. And that's how he practiced archery. So she saw in him seeds of becoming a murderer, and seeds of becoming also he was keen on playing, was really keen on playing with girls. And he saw in him, he's going to be, he wants to, he's not so modest as is accepted in our home by the parents. So she wanted him out. She said, can't carry on. Better out now, and not wait until the tragedies occur. But then it said, next verse, this was very evil in the eyes of Avram on account of his son. What does that mean? It means Avram, he was an enormous Baal Chesed. And he said, what? My task in life is to bring all people to Hashem. And my own son who's been here, what I'm not going to, how can I ask him to leave? I'll the one who said, well, Sarah's always been my main wife. Yeah? Only took the Hagar because Sarah wanted it so much. Because she didn't have a child, she said she'll adopt the child, she'll raise the child. But what happened in between, we can see Hagar was really the one who was raising Ishmael more than, which is not true. Ishmael felt nearer to his mother Hagar than he felt to Sarah. So therefore, his stepmother didn't have so much influence over him, as did the maidservant. So it was very difficult for Avram. I'll tell you more. I'll tell you this for the story, with which there's an interesting episode connected also with Yeshiva. There was a person raised in under the communists in Eastern Europe in a Torah family. So he went to Cheder, but he was a rather rebellious child. He was called Aryeh Bonstein, was his name, Aryeh Bonstein. And there's a whole discussion in this. They went to Yeshiva Katana, should they keep him or not? Although he didn't have much discipline, and he often went wild, and he didn't attend the right times, and he was also arrogant to the teachers. And they had a big discussion. Should they keep him or not keep him? In the end they decided he's too bad an influence in this Yeshiva Katana, and therefore they threw him out. They said, we can't keep him. So as a result, he became a communist, he joined the communists. In the end he became the Jewish leader of the communists. What was his name? Leon Trotsky. He changed his name as well, Trotsky. His original name was Aryeh Bonstein. So people, in those years, a few years later, people used to go to the Horovitz Chaim to ask him different advice. So somebody from one of the yeshivas Katanas came to, we've also got a wild fellow in the yeshiva Katana, we can't deal with him. What should we do? So the Horovitz Chaim said, do everything possible to keep him. You've got to keep him. Because if you don't, Leon Trotsky, he brought communism to the Jews in a strong manner. And it's likely that he caused a few 100,000 Jews through his personal power, because he was a bright fellow. He became one of the leaders, associated with Lenin, and a few 100,000 Jews left Torah to become atheistic communists because of him. So this story was told by the Horovitz Chaim, in fact probably a few times. Be careful, don't throw someone out from the yeshiva, because you don't know what you might be doing. Because there's a certain person who did it in his yeshiva Katana, he's the cause, to some extent, of 100,000 Jews becoming rebellious against the Torah, not carrying on. And as we see, the result of communism has made so many Jews agnostics, if not atheists. So this carries on until today, that influence. So therefore you warn people. Nevertheless, there are situations where even the Horovitz Chaim himself, for example, somebody also of that nature came to Radin, where the Horovitz Chaim had his yeshiva. And the Horovitz Chaim also couldn't keep in the yeshiva. But the Horovitz Chaim made sure, what did he do? He said, took him to his house, put him in his house, be friendly with him, and tried to send him a different yeshiva. Didn't work out. But in any case, that person himself, if somebody told the story once then in my army, and the person himself, he said, I'm that person. Because he looked after him so well in the house, so he always had big respect. He didn't carry on yeshivas, became a bit secular and so on, but didn't become an outright communist. And he said the warmth of the way the Horovitz Chaim looked after him, that's what's protected him until today. He heard that talk when a rabbi repeated it in a Ma'am Mishur, the talk himself. Now I'll tell you something else. We had connected with this. In the early years of the yeshiva, there was a young person from England who told me his name is Leo Bronstein. That was his name. That's how he registered himself. And he was an agnostic, didn't believe in God. But he said, I must try out what Judaism is all about. He knew nothing about Judaism. So we taught him, and Baruch Hashem, we got him round to have strong emunah in God. And then also start keeping the mitzvahs. Until he became a Torah Jew. And then we found out, because there was some mix-up, we were told of his original passport or something, and it's got a different name, entirely. Not Bronstein. So why do you accept that name? Well, because he came to yeshiva as a Trotskyist. He followed Trotsky's interpretation of communism and was an agnostic. Didn't believe in anything with Torah. Then he changed. So that's how I remember this whole story. So all these questions are very important questions dealt with here in the past. And that's why Avram, he said, what do you mean? I can educate him. But Hashem said, no. Sarah has higher level and you must listen to her. Also, I suppose because Sarah had more familiarity with the tendencies of this youngster and the support he was getting from his mother. His mother she's a bit ambivalent. It happened before in a pregnancy. On the one hand, she was very attracted to Avram and Sarah and the lifestyle, and she had belief in God. But she had her Egyptian, obviously daughter of Paran, the granddaughter of Nimrod, so she had that in her as well. And when things are very difficult, she wanted to leave everything. But Malachim came and told her to go back. So this was the Aladot Manoi was concerned, especially said, my son, he's still my son, and I can give him part of the Brit Avraham. Afterwards, Avraham said, these my children, not just children. My children are the future of the world. The future of the world, I know, I've got to put into these children that they must make a joint nation. A joint nation. Or Yitzchak will be reared on a spiritual level, and he will see to material needs. That was it. But Sorah said, no, even material needs, you've got to have someone who is entirely dedicated to the true life outlook of serving Hashem. You see, this is all underlying this. So he said to him, let him, even Hashem, in his words, he says to Avram, next verse, let it not be evil in your eyes, because the boy and the maidservant, but do everything that Sorah tells you. Why? Ki v'yitzchak because in Yitzchak will be your true seed. And they say, Yitzchak, there's a hint here, it might happen again. Not the total of Yitzchak. What's the hint here? You see the word, each word is prophetic. Yitzchak. Why did they say Yitzchak? Yitzchak will record your seed. But Zaracha Acharecha, the true seed, is not all of Yitzchak. Because that the same thing happened with whom?
With Yaakov
and Esau. But don't think that Yishmael is going to lose out. He's going to become a power, because still Zarachuhu. In other words, they'll also have a power. Ki Zarachuhu, and there's more in this also, he carries the name of God, Yishmael. So he fulfilled it. And then there was no water left. And then, in fact, it says he listened to the prayers to some extent of Hogah, but even more so of Ishmael himself, because it says that it's the reason. He's an important nation. Hagar, don't think that you can abandon the child. No, it's your task, an important task, to look after that child, because he is going to be a great nation. And then even the greatness of Hagar is shown here, because it says in verse 19, God opened her eyes, and then she saw the fountain of water. As a result, she was able to save the son from dying of thirst. Now, have you ever used this? You've heard of the Kupat of Meir Balanes? If you're looking for something which you've lost, something valuable, then there's a custom until today. It's based upon a midrash on this verse. He says, all of us are blind until Hashem opens our eyes. That means we lose things, but we trust in Hashem, we'll find them. Because Hashem opens our eyes. So therefore the custom is, many people, if you've lost something, you never said it, then go and say these words. Say, it doesn't say Bermoy was created. She couldn't see it. She couldn't find it. She was in a hopeless state of mind, said, I'm going to die of thirst, I can't move anymore, and he was already age 14, yeah, it's age 14, but he was sick, became sick. He was sick, and he can't help himself. There's no water left in the area. They didn't have mobiles with them. Couldn't go and ask. There's nobody around. So, but they cried to Hashem. They both cried to Hashem. Hashem listened to the boy. Why? Because Ishmael is his name. Ishmael, God will listen to your prayers when you're in trouble. And this is a hint, they say, on the future as well. That the great power of the Islam world is their power of prayer. They pray to Hashem, and then they become powerful. Hashem gives them power. Some use the power for good, but if we're not careful, we use it for wild destruction. But when it says here, God opened the eyes, it could happen to all of us. It could happen to all of us. Often you don't find something, and you're in a desperate state, and you fall into despair and say there's no hope left. You become depressed. No. Pray to Hashem, and you'll find it. And the power of prayer is very great. We say the power of prayer is extremely great. They made a survey. They started in the west states of the US, in the hospitals, of people who are in terminal state. I mean, the doctor always decided they're about to die soon. And they made a survey if they pray or they don't pray. Or people pray for them or nobody prays for them. They found out that there where there's prayer to God, the rate of them recovering is enormously high, far more than those who don't pray. Prayer is very powerful. And not only for Jews, Muslims also have to give them power. And then it says the Malachim complained. They said, "What do you mean? Why does Hashem answer the prayers of Ishmael, whose descendants are going to be so cruel to the true people of Hashem? They're going to murder them in terrible ways. So why should we say? Hashem Usham, at that moment, he was still a tzaddik. He behaved like a tzaddik, or underneath he had tendencies, but he hadn't yet committed crimes. So he was a tzaddik, so Hashem listened to him. As long as they don't commit crimes, Hashem listens to their prayers. And I think this is a deep teaching here. Now, it says, I'll just end with this, which I started to explain yesterday. If those of you who got the Jerusalem Bible, please turn to the end of the book of Proverbs. Although we just started to explain this yesterday, but I think it's worthwhile a further explanation, which I leave to the next year, but just introduce you. So in the last chapter is the praise of the Eshet Chayil, the woman of valor, who is on the highest level of womanhood. And there it says that, and it goes according to the Aleph-Bet, and the Dalet, Dor shotzem ofishtem, otaz kerevetz veo. She seeks out wool and flax, and then produces with her hands garments, which she does willingly. And she uses also to develop the textile business, so it appears. Anyway, the sages say that one way of interpreting the various phrases here, they refer to Sarah Imenu, the mother of the people of Israel. So they say, that happened with regard to driving out Hagar and Ishmael from the house of Avram. She did it on the basis of investigating the meaning of wool and linen. The Midrash, on the surface, you could say, oh, it's an allegory. Simple allegory, but generally speaking, there's a great depth there. So with this wool and linen is a reference to the qualities of warmth and the qualities of coldness in the emotions of every human being, and how they're to be used. So, as we explained, that tzemeh is warmth, and the tzemeh of Avraham Avinu, warmth, was extremely great. All the episodes relate about Avraham Avinu are the enormous power of love, how he loved other human beings and tried to bring them to Hashem. And it was all an outflow of giving. And he was tested. Even this was one of the big tests for him, very difficult. He had to act against the lit power of love. There was that love for, he loved Ishmael also. So he said, how can I ask him to leave? Hashem says you have to, sometimes you've got to limit love. And we know parents have to know that as well. Many children grow up with a bad character because the parents gave them too much love. They gave in to whatever the child wanted. They find it very difficult to refuse anything. As a result, the children sometimes grow up taking everybody else for granted. I expect whatever I want, I get. And that's how they go through life. And they were spoiled by, that's the English word, they get spoiled from their parents. Their character gets spoiled, gets ruined. Because the parents can't limit it. And sometimes children grow up with all types of severe problems because of that. They can't control their appetite at all. Anything they want, anything they crave for, they get hold of it. They overeat, they overdrink, they have substance abuse. It often comes from parents spoiling their children. They take everything for granted. Yeah. And sometimes also they shout at everybody else and think they're the only ones who have significance in this world. So therefore you've got to limit it. You've got to sometimes play it cool. So linen is what you use to keep yourself cool in the heat of the sun. And warm is what you use to keep yourself warm in the winter. But you've got to have a balance between the two and know when to apply what. So this has a lot to do with how we speak about the God of Avraham, the God of Yitzchak, the God of Yaakov, because each one had a different characteristic. But that we'll have to leave for the next year. But it's applied to the episode which you read about, which is just read here from next week's Parsha.